Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the ServiceMonster podcast. I'm your host today, Joe Kowalski. We've got a handful of really fun things to talk about. Of course, we're going to touch on some of the server issues we had a couple times over the last 2 days, affecting about 20 users, 30 users, from what our reports are saying. So we'll touch on that real quick if you're one of the users, and you'll get the benefit even if you're not experiencing major latency of some of the changes that we made. We'll talk about mobile, where we are with that release coming up there. ServiceMonster 6.51 is on the way. We touched on that last week. We probably won't dive too deep into there. But before we do all of that, Adam, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so we kind of in our podcast discussion, we're kind of going over, might be a good time to talk about just some, KPIs, important KPIs for service businesses. And if you guys don't know, I'm sure most of you guys do, KPI is just referencing, key performance indicators. It's a big thing that we talk about, from time to time. Joe has had, various Ask Service Monsters about that. We've had blog posts about it, and so on. But since the new 6.5 dashboards that came out over the last couple of months, we figured we could kind of segue kind of both of those together. So let's just kind of dive in and I guess kind of talk about what we think the most important KPIs are and how you can track them, whether it's with ServiceMonster, whether it's somewhere else, and then why it's important to be tracking those. So let's kind of start with the repeat rate. So, I mean, it's kind of obvious right there in the name, but what are we talking about with repeat rate here, Joe?
Well, it's more complicated than it sounds, but the general idea is how much of your clients are coming back to you and using you again. There's an incorrect way to calculate it, which I feel is suffered by the vast majority of people who don't study statistics. They'll take a month's worth of work. They'll look at the numbers. They'll see how many clients they did and how many of those clients were new clients. Then they'll divide those two numbers together, getting a percentage, and they think that's the repeat rate. That is not your repeat rate. That is the amount of work you did that month that happened to be by returning clients. It actually doesn't mean a damn thing. Here's an example that points it out. Let's say that on an average month, you pull in 50 new clients and you're pretty consistent with 50 clients coming back to you on a regular basis within a 1 month period of time. So you might look at that and say, well, shit, I got a 50% repeat rate. All right, we're just going to stick a pin in that. Okay. Let's say that you run a really amazing marketing month, though. You do some campaign that really just blows things up. And instead of 50 that month, you get 100. Now, your repeat rate goes from 50% to 30%. Well, that's bad, right? So this points out a very problematic calculation in that the better you do on the sales side, the worse it looks like you're doing on the repeat side. So not only does it not mean anything, but if you're making decisions based off it, you're making the wrong decisions. Let's flip it. Let's say that 1 month your prospecting is horrible. Nobody comes back to you, not even those 50. But you had those 50 clients return to you that month. 100% repeat rate, baby. Wait, something's not right. Okay, so obviously that's a problem. That's a problem calculation. It's a problem if you're making decisions. It's a problem if you think that's your repeat rate. Here's the real repeat rate. You have to take a period of time. Usually we say for the service industry, it's about 2 years. If you're strictly air duct, okay, maybe 3 or 4. Tile and grout, if you do that primarily, maybe 3. Carpet cleaning's 2. Maid services should be every month if you get a regular client. So this calculation I'm going to give you can be adjusted for the length of time, but the rest of it remains the same. And so what you do is you take all of the clients who've used you in the last 2 years, you subtract off the people who've used you in the last 6 months. It doesn't really give them time to repeat, right? So it's going to bring your number down a little bit. And then you take that entire list and you ask the system, out of this list, who has ever used us more than once? That gives you a much more accurate repeat rate. It might not be apples to apples to your next door neighbor who might be doing a little bit longer. Maybe they're doing a 36 month, but it will be apples to apples for you, which is what's important. That's the biggest misconception about data sometimes, is that people look at the single data point and then they want to argue it all day long. Okay, some of those arguments might even be valid. What's more critical, though, is making sure that you derive the same number the same way at different periods of time, and you're comparing the two. That's the more beneficial metric, because that way it gives you if you're moving the needle. So you can argue about the data all you want. I don't give a shit about that. I care about the movement. I care about the change. And so as long as you're consistent with the two data points, then it's fine. So calculating repeat rate, take all the customers that have used you between 6 months ago and 24 months ago. Ask the system how many of those have ever used you more than once. Do a little percent math, divide the two numbers up, come up with a decimal, multiply by 100. And that's the repeat rate that you want to target on and focus on, and watch as you make changes in your client retention program to help you improve your repeat rate. Now, I have a chart. I've done massive amounts of blog and posts and social media content, and Michael's gone back after me to pick it all up sometime later and do another post and another. Like, we talk about this a lot, so I won't dive into it too much, but I'll sum up the comparison I usually do this way. Company A, company B, all metrics are the same. The only difference is repeat rate. Company A has a repeat rate of 25%. Company B has a repeat rate of 60%. In 8 years, company B is $1 million business. In 8 years, company A is exactly where they were at before, at around 200,000. No growth. So that's why repeat rate is important. At the end of the day, it's the only way to scale. It's the only way to grow your business. It's the only way to get more clients so you can get off the truck and grow your business to the point where you can leave it in charge with other competent people while you go sit on a beach somewhere. So repeat rate, repeat rate, repeat rate.
Yeah, and it's a huge kind of indicator if you're running a transactional style service business, or if you're actually building that relationship, which is another thing that we talk about, ad nauseum here. You want to be building those relationships for a long time, because any marketer, I'm sure Michael can kind of chip in, any marketer who's worth their salt is constantly going to be harping the fact that it's much cheaper to be retaining your current client base than to gain a new one.
Yeah.
So,
and they're more profitable, right? The marketing cost is almost nothing. Even if you have a solid client retention strategy where you're sending out direct mail, you're doing email, you're spending money on newsletters or content, the cost of getting in the door, right, of acquiring the lead and then going through that little dance where you're making a couple phone calls or you go out and do the estimate, none of those costs are present the second time around. The job is so much more profitable on those repeats. So yeah, do it. Like, if you don't have a consistent client retention strategy, shame on you. And now, in the event of COVID, if you're not doing a client retention program, or you're not keeping track of your customers, or you don't have a customer list you can easily reach out to them on, you're going to lose. Because what's going to happen is all of the ServiceMonster people, and this is ServiceMonster specific a little bit here, but you can use any CRM. Those who are using, the 35% of the industry who's using a CRM, they're going to be contacting all their clients here in about 3 days. They're going to be like, open for business. Now, a lot of you guys didn't close down, but the point is that your clients don't know that. I'm getting DMs all the time from people like, oh, what kind of a mass email should I send out to let people know that I'm open for business? And it's like 3 clicks of a button. You put together a little content, boo, you're done. If you're not tracking your clients, and if you don't have a client retention strategy, you're going to lose, man. It's just, that's it. Like, everybody's going to call somebody else because you're not staying in touch and you're not communicating. So in this rare situation, there might be a benefit to a one-time reach out campaign, like one direct mail. But I would be very conscious of the fact that if you don't have something in place, you better do it now. Because we're seeing an increase in our lead acquisition. The cost of leads are going down. More people are buying CRM. That's pretty cool for us. Like, I expected this shit to happen 7 years ago, until 10 years ago. But what that really means, the people who aren't playing that game, they're going to get crushed. Because now if it goes 45, 50, 55% are using a CRM, they will hand you your ass if you're still using pen and paper. Obviously, rural Nebraska, right? If you've been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years and you're in pen and paper, will you see a difference? There will be anecdotally people who don't. But the vast majority of people who are getting systematized are just going to start running over everyone who's still using pen and paper. So client retention strategy, client retention programs, client retention. And that really, really, in order to do it right, you really need a decent CRM.
Yep. This also kind of ties into what we talked about last week as far as, loyalty. And if you're not, constantly building that relationship for, years at a time, that's where those loyal customers are really going to kind of show up. And you'll have the ones that are buying gift cards or things like that during an issue with COVID-19 where, hey, everyone, or I shouldn't say everyone, but certain areas were, completely locked down. They couldn't do anything, per the governor's orders. So their loyal kind of customer base was like, listen, I still want you to be around when we come out of this. So I'm going to purchase something now. We'll do the work later. So
or just give them money like we talked about last time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So before we move on, we'll just really quickly, what's kind of like a good target? It'll vary a little bit by industry, like you said, but as far as like your repeat rate targets, what should kind of the average user be looking for to feel like they're doing a successful job?
Yeah. So, there's a couple of buckets that I can see, like 0 to 15% tells me you suck at your job, you have no client retention strategy, and you're not very good at what you do. Like you're all about the transaction. You're all about the buck. You're probably, one bam, one shot. Thank you, man. You're value cleaner, like even a price shopper cleaner, right? You're not going to be around for very long because you're not making the margins. You're not doing the growth. It's just, you're come and gone. Most people, if they show up on time and they follow the service provider's motto, we've talked about that before, they shouldn't have a hard time hitting 25% organically without any retention strategies. So if you're under 15%, then check your business model. Like repeat is not your thing. So that's a whole other game. 16 to 30%. I see people who have decent businesses. They talk to Mrs. Jones very well. They're well liked. Again, though, they're either doing no client retention or it's like largely inconsistent. They do one hit wonders a couple times a year, but they're not really focused on it. They don't have a strategy, a plan, a path. You can get to 30% just on your good looks and a smile, but that is not, like we talked about before, that's a company A scheme. It means you're going to make $150,000 to $200,000 and you're going to be stuck. And that's it. You're just going to sit there. 31 to 50%, you see things like consistent generic mailings, like newsletters, just spamming stuff out. Maybe a decent email campaign that's got some decent content. Maybe you're staying in front of them via Facebook. But it's not super consistent. It's usually generic. You've hired a third party to do stuff. You can get to 50% that way. But again, service provider's motto has to be top notch. You smell good, look good. You're super clean. You call, you show up on time. The communication level is super high. You under promise and over deliver. You can do that without a consistent or specific retention strategy, but it's much more hard and all cylinders have to be firing. 51 to 80%, I have seen it as high as 80%. Client retention, these guys are all about client retention. They live it, they breathe it. They know that staying in front of their customers is the biggest way to profitability. They're really focused on it. They have specific mailers. They're addressing the client. The content is of value to the client. It's not just a pitch. And so we've seen that for 12 years or better since we've been doing Fill My Schedule. So Fill My Schedule is a very specific, pointed, targeted direct mail campaign. It's completely automated based off the last date of invoice. And it's an automated client retention program, gets 800% nationwide ROI. And I'm excited by that. I like to talk about that, but it isn't because we're like super geniuses or anything. It's because we do it. And we do it for our clients every single month. The thank yous go out every single week. And so you can do a Fill My Schedule type program on your own And we're very open about that content. You can even just steal the campaign that we have, if you want to do it on your own, no problem with that. But that's what it takes to get to that level. Anything over 80% is kind of like urban myth, legends that, unreproducible outliers. I think I've only seen above 80% one time. Obviously, I don't look at every single client's repeat rate. So there might be some people out there that I just haven't seen or been exposed to. But I do look at data a lot. In this industry, I've probably seen more data points for clients than any other person in the industry. And I've only seen like 82% one time. And I won't even tell you who it is. And it was, it's a mix. It's that attitude of client retention is all, combined with maybe some isolated geographic area and not only the service provider's motto, but you're just taking those extra steps and you're really working hard in your community and you're all about service, and hell, maybe you're even doing some Ronald McDonald houses once in a while. So the only time I've ever seen it, and it was short-lived. It was just lasted for like a year or two, and before it went down to the normal kind of 65-70% high, very high retention rate, but normal for them. So yeah, and
this is something that you can easily see now. We put a dashboard right on the new homepage on ServiceMonster 6.5. You can see both your residential and your commercial kind of repeat rate. It's also on your account screen. So if for some reason you prefer one of the older homepages, version 1.0 or 1.1, you can still see that on the account dashboard as well. So
yeah, I mean, obviously I'm really focused through this whole conversation mostly on residential. I mean, you should have built-in mechanisms for repeating with commercial, even if you're going quarterly. And so your repeat on your commercial account should be extremely high. I mean, and maid services repeat rates should be extremely high. So let's move off repeat rate though, man. And we beat this so much all the time, and it's always good to revisit. It's always good to revisit. And you guys might pull out some new information, from our conversation here, but we do talk about it quite a bit. But it is the most important one. So if we're going to talk about KPIs, we do have to lead with that. So what's the next one?
So the next one is total market potential. So it's not strictly a KPI, but kind of just knowing
it as a KPI. Yeah, because you can do a lot of stuff with this number. Okay, so total market potential, what is it? It's again, we're focused on the data point, not the specifics of how the data is derived, which means that it's an estimated count of your potential market. So you can use InfoUSA, which is a really good data acquisition tool. You can pay for client data and, addresses and phone numbers and all that stuff. Obviously, you can't do not call. So I wouldn't be calling or doing cold calls based off that unless it was commercial, because they don't have the same restrictions. But InfoUSA allows you to obtain this number for free. So what you can do is go there, draw a little circle around the area that you're willing to service. So obviously, if it's 2 hours away, that's not going to be part of your demographic. And then you can dial in on specific data points. So what you're looking for probably are 25 to 55-year-old home-owning females with kids and or pets, and a certain dollar amount on their home, which is focusing and narrowing your focus on a specific demographic in your market. So if you don't know what that is, you can actually use your current clients as a measure. Take your current clients and study, maybe do an Excel spreadsheet or something, or custom profile fields, and you start playing with that, and then start looking at those clients and who are your best clients, like your top 10%. And then you want to get as many of those as possible. And so you kind of figure out what are the common metrics, where they work, worship, a play, how much is their home worth, are they in the specific neighborhoods within your community. Once you've done that in InfoUSA, that'll come up with a number. Just picking out of a hat, let's say the number comes out as 10,000. So that's the KPI, total marketable base, 10,000. You have a potential customer base. If you got every single potential client in your community, 100%, you'd have 10,000 clients. So what does that number mean? Because just that by itself, again, doesn't mean anything. A single data point doesn't mean anything. Here's some stuff that I find fascinating. At 1% of your total marketable base, if you own that, let's say your client count, the number of clients you serviced in the last 2 years, off this 10,000 is 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, right? So these are factors. At 1%, you start to get in a little bit of referrals. You start to see that train kicking in, especially if you're pitching it. Referral marketing is the name of the game, but you have to have enough clients in the community to start the process. At 10%, that 1% is just kind of a gimme, right? It's just like, I've got some clients and now they might start talking if I do right. But the interesting thing that I've noticed over these last 17 years is at 10%. So in this case, out of 10,000, you have 1,000 clients. If you've done your referral marketing correctly, and it doesn't mean giving away money, we've talked about that before too. But if you get 1,000 clients, it is possible to get all new lead acquisition from referrals, that you're not actually doing any kind of lead acquisition or outreach. Is it a good idea? For some people, depending on how much they really want to grow and move. Maybe they're not ambitious. Maybe their ambitions aren't aligned with a $5 million cleaning company. So that's what I look at. If you know your total marketable base, then you know how much potential you have for growth. And then how do you tackle that? And then how do you get the 1%? And then how do you get the 10%? And how much of that is referral marketing? So those things mixed together make for a very powerful client acquisition. So we talked about repeat rate, right? Getting clients to come back to you. That's always your best source of jobs, is your current client base. But then lead acquisition, which is really focused on referrals. You have to have enough referrals in your community of your demographic to generate more referrals. So that's kind of the umbrella of that. So go to Info USA and play with it. Now, I have had some people hit me up in the DM like, why did you make me do that, dude? I have a total marketable base of 1,500 people. I thought I was going to have $1 million business. As it turns out, it's absolutely impossible for me to do more than 150 grand or 200 grand a year. And I go, now you know, move or do something else or figure out something that reaches a larger area of your market. But having the data, that's half the battle.
Yeah, I mean, if someone was asking me that, probably something you'd want to know really before you started the business. So
this is a kind of a peek behind the curtain, but I am looking within the next year or two to move into my investment phase of my life, where I'm going to start looking at other businesses I want to help prop up. Probably not a service business, guys. Don't get excited. And so I've been in the VC community as an angel investor, just kind of hanging out, talking to people now for about 2 years. Not looking for money for ServiceMonster, by the way. Don't get excited. It is hard to give away money. It is hard to give away money. And I don't mean like the physical act, obviously. I mean, I have yet in 2 years to find any business I'd be willing to invest in. Because I asked them 4 questions that they should absolutely know the freaking answer to, and they haven't got a clue. And one of the questions I would ask a service provider, if I was so inclined, is, what's your total marketable base? What is your potential business here? And almost nobody knows it. And that's just a huge red flag for me. So know it. Like these numbers, you need to know. These KPIs, you need to know them. If you don't have a CRM or you don't have these tools, like figure out a way to do it through Excel spreadsheets, sit up at night and enter in your invoices into Excel. I don't care, but know these numbers.
Absolutely. And just for all of you guys and gals that were listening, there's 2 things he's talking about there that kind of got merged into one conversation. So total potential is, if you had 100% everyone that you could possibly have, and then the total marketable base is who you currently have.
Yes.
Active clients in your database. And we actually have a really
help
easy
if
way.
I was going through the blog as I was saying about this.
Well, in ServiceMonster, there's a really easy way for you to see that. Fill My Schedule already had your total marketable base, and it was tied to your active clients who also had a mailing address, because that's a pretty important part. If you're looking at marketable base for a specific type of marketing, you want to be able to have that. We actually added that with 6.5 on the accounts section, the account list. There are views now, so you can see your marketable base with email addresses, your marketable base with phone numbers, your marketable base with the street addresses. So if you're planning a particular type of marketing campaign, all three of those will kind of show you what that is. You can easily export it out and kind of go from there, or obviously use that to build a marketing campaign within ServiceMonster. So
Yeah, and I'm looking through the blog now and like, holy crap, we did this like 4 years ago, and I'm also verbatim on all this stuff. It's so weird.
You are. I actually was like, I thought you were kind of reading it along.
I just pulled it up.
I was like, wow, he's like repeating it word for word. That's impressive. But I mean, you wrote it, so
yeah. Well, 4 years ago, but yeah.
Well, the interesting thing with important concepts is that a lot of times you do have to kind of repeat that and kind of dive back in. And Joe, we always talk about, right, like we're smarter than we were back then, so what can we add on top of that? And it's not the end of the world to have these discussions again, because they are important. That's the reason why we discuss them.
Totally. What's next?
This one is a fun one to talk about. Talk about pricing a lot, but average invoice.
Yeah, and I'm going to dogpile on this one because 4 years ago we did not have margins. So I want to merge this conversation. In 6.5, we gave you a margins dashboard so you can figure out what the profitability is of your jobs or close to it. Again, right? My juice went up $5 and now my margins are shit. No, it's a 0.5% difference. Like what's important is that you're in the ballpark and you're comparing them. Okay. So average invoice, pretty self-explanatory, although you want to separate it between commercial and residential. And if you provide a wide variety of services, if you do carpet cleaning and tile cleaning and window cleaning and pressure washing and maid services and restoration work, you probably want to leave the restoration work off to the side when you average out your invoices, because those are going to be $7,000 to $20,000 averages, where your cleaning invoices are going to sit somewhere in the $250 range. Unless you're a commercial fleet pressure washer and you're going to be pulling in a couple grand. Again, it's all over the map, but what's important is that you know it, you know what it is. And you know that when you do things that affect it, does it go up or down? Using your average invoice in concert with your margins is important, because if you increase your average invoice, but your expenses stay the same, your profitability gets more and you put more money into the business. It's really that simple. Too many people are skating on thin margins and they don't even fully realize it. The depreciation on your equipment, the chemical costs that you have, the consumable costs of your materials that you have, like booties get thrown away and gloves get thrown away and masks get thrown away, that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the big part of your expenses is going to be labor for the most part. So taking those three things into account, figuring out what your average expense is on each job, and then being able to margin that out is really important if you want to grow and survive. Too many people look at that and go, oh man, I'm only making $20 off every $100. That 20% margin is killing you. You're not able to get off the truck or grow or put money into other places. So that's why knowing what your average invoice is, working hard to make that go north, and then controlling your expenses to the point where you're making sure you're spending money in the right places. The goal is never not to spend money, right? It's not like, oh, that labor cost, I think I can hire cheaper people. No, that's the wrong way to cut that apple. You've got to increase your price so you can give more to your technicians, so you have a more stable employment environment, so that you can actually build a company culture. Then when you start to do scale and volume, those percentages make big differences on the bottom line. So tracking your average invoice is important. Knowing what your margins are, super important. Making sure you're charging enough is the name of the game there.
Yeah, the thing you touched on there at the end, I think, is something that gets read a lot of times when you're just solely focused on the numbers. I was actually reading an article, both Michael and I were. This guy, he has an HVAC company in California, and his turnover was just massive. There was already a shortage in this country as far as certain skilled labor positions. So, especially as you go up into plumbing, electrician work and so on. But I mean, sure, with COVID-19, it's a little bit different environment. There'll probably be more people who are looking for work after this. But if you find a way to have those quality technicians, you're taking care of them, so they're taking care of you. They're the face of your service business, and they're the ones who are doing that work for you. And there are things you can do, not even just tied to direct salary, but there are things you can do to kind of showcase that. And so, obviously, stopping turnover is just kind of one of those things. Before we move on, just really quick, Joe, what are just some ways that maybe you could improve that average invoice?
There's only a few ways that you can get more money, right? You can raise your prices. You can do more service. You can get more customers. So that's the three ways essentially that marketers will say, this is the only way you can get more money. Do more services for a current client, raise your prices on those services, and or get more clients. So obviously get more clients. We talked about that already. Raising your prices is a real thing. And you don't even have to do it bigly, right? You can do a 10% or 15% increase a year, and most people won't notice on a $200 invoice the extra 20 or 30 bucks. If they do, then you can have a conversation with them like, yeah, I'm a real business. I have expenses to take care of, and you've been supporting me this whole time. So that's great. Or raise it 15% and give Mrs. Jones a 10% discount, right? If you want to keep them because they're really bitching. But, and then of course, the other way is to make sure that you're offering all the services to your client so that they are aware of them. And this doesn't like gold chain salesman trying to upsell or hard, but it does. Look at the number one problem besides not following the service provider motto is client retention for most service providers. The number two problem is your customers don't know all the products and services that you offer because you do a horrible job communicating that. Not only is it not in your direct mail or your email or the communication that's non-existent, but it's also not present in the conversation. She's got tile in the kitchen, man. What are you doing? That couch looks a little ruffled. So you want to be of service. So the way that I would do this is pretty simple. Instead of coming in and doing an estimate and focused on what Mrs. Jones wants, you turn it into an inspection where you focus on what Mrs. Jones wants, and then you go through like a pro and have her walk you through the house and looking around and making notes and very nice, very interesting, fascinating. And you're looking all over the place. And all right, Mrs. Jones, what again? This is what you called us for. This is what you want us to do, right? Yeah, okay. I did notice on the inspection, though, there's a handful of things that are kind of critical. It's like your automobile, your mechanic does this, right? Here's some stuff that's critical. Like I would really not want to see you drive off the lot until we fix these things. These things you can wait on if you really want to, where I can knock them out now, but it's going to need to be done at some point. And here's a list of things that I can take care of when I come back next time. Whoa, what did I just do? Not only did I let Mrs. Jones know about some of those things that I care about as a cleaner, right? I don't tangent. Sorry, parenthetic discussion real quick. Ed York, who's one of the grandfathers of our industry, who's died, I don't know, 8 years ago at this point. He did a lot of business with the Japanese. And one of the big ways the Japanese were selling work, both commercial and residential, is they would hand them this kind of plexiglass strip. And on one side of it, it would be slightly translucent. It would have some sort of material on it that kind of made it darker. And the other side was completely transparent. And what they would do is they give that to their client and they would say, measure your carpet. And if your carpet starts to look more like the strip on the not painted side, call me, because it's a matter of honor for me. You're my client. I will not let you have dirty carpet. And so that honor binding was a huge way that Japanese carpet cleaners and janitorial services made their money, because to them, it was important to them that the things that they were cleaning stayed clean. And so exactly the same thing here. So Mrs. Jones, look, I've got I've got some things that you really need to take care of. I wouldn't feel good as a cleaner if I just left you and I did this part, but not that part. Here's some stuff that you may want to consider. You can call us back in a couple months. All right, now I dropped a little repeat seed. And then I can take care of these things when I come back next time. So now it's not a seed. Now it's a foregone conclusion. I'm coming back next time. And these are the things I'll take care of when I do that. And so that really establishes you as their expert and their cleaner. And so using that kind of language and having that kind of discussion, being empathetic the entire time and not trying to oversell, just trying to communicate and educate. That's imperative. So those are ways that you can improve your invoice today, right now, start today, having conversations with Mrs. Jones, talking about some additional things that you'd like to see done, and then maybe some things that you'll note the account that you can do the next time you come out.
Very nice. This one easily kind of segues into the next one, and that's kind of touched on a little bit, but the income by service, kind of knowing what your breakdown is.
Yeah, as a KPI, you should know it, right? As a pie chart. So you have a pie chart, which represents 100% of your income. How much of that is from tile? How much of that is from carpet? How much of that is from protectant? Again, ServiceMonster makes this super easy. You can do some of this in QuickBooks as well if you're categorizing your charges correctly. There's a handful of ways. Of course, Excel spreadsheet works as well. Here's an anecdotal story for you that will hit this home. Oh man, we were just getting started. We're maybe like 2 years in. And so I was doing all the sales, right? And I'm talking with this gentleman. And at the time I would sign up their marketing consultation for 30 days later. And so when we had the conversation, he was a bit chauvinistic. I don't do that. That's woman's work. And he was talking about upholstery and drapery. I bring my wife in and she does that. I never touch that stuff. I hate doing that crap. Of course, I'm just like eyebrow raised. All right, well, sure. Moving along. He buys 30 days later. We're doing the marketing consult. And I noticed before I called him that freaking upholstery was 25% of his business. He had no idea. And so when I called him for his marketing consultation, I was like, so your wife seems to be killing it there. What do you mean? Like, let me show you how much upholstery you're doing. And he wigged out and he just like, I'm sorry. And he got off the phone and I could hear him talking to his wife. And he's like, look at this. Look at how much we do. Oh my God. And he came back. He's like, yeah, I'm going to have to start doing upholstery. Right. He had no idea until he saw the number. He had no idea it was such a big part of his business, even though he was only doing it rarely or sending his wife out to do those kind of jobs. So, it's important to know your breakdown because that's what your clients are telling you they're interested in. They're not interested in what the distributor's trying to sell you, or they may be. The distributor doesn't know though. They don't know like how much tile percentage wise is in your county, or the demographic that you service. So if you have that pie chart and you can see movement, again, multiple metrics calculated the same way, the movement is what's important. It's like, wow, that tile and grout seems to be increasing. Like I'm doing 5% more this month than last month and 3% more than the month before that. The clients are telling you something at scale that this is the service they're interested in. And so you need to be making sure that you're aligned. You've got the proper tools and education and training, that your staff is trained, that everybody's talking about it to let them know the different products and services that you offer, especially the ones that you're interested in. So if you have that pie chart, and Mrs. Jones, and you see carpet, tile, and windows are your three top performers, not protectant, not Prevac, not, all that other stuff. Those are where you should be focusing your messaging. So in your marketing messaging, you should be focused on the things that your clients care about, not the things you want to do, not the things the distributor wants to sell you, but those individual items that your community is telling you they want.
Absolutely. One quick thing I'll just add on here in case any of our ServiceMonster users are not doing this. Like Joe mentioned, there's an easy to read dashboard on the order section, which shows kind of the breakdown as far as the pie chart goes. There's also a report. It's called Income by Type. There's a detailed and a summary version of it, so you can kind of get both of those. But what's important is that when you're building your products and services, there is what we call a group. And you're going to want to make sure that you group these items into certain categories because that's where this information is going to come from. So you have
I mean, you
questions
can
on that,
certainly look at your entire price list and get the
Right.
percentages off that, but that doesn't tell you nearly as much as like, here's these items in my price list that are all carpet cleaning, right? And then here's these items in my price list that are all tile or protectant or whatever. And then you're reporting on those groups. It's a much better metric.
absolutely. So the next KPI is clients by lead source, and this is actually something that I hit when I was doing all my onboarding training. This is something that I would talk about all the time because not everyone will be tracking their lead sources. So what are we talking about here, Joe?
Oh man. So I don't want to go too deep, but I do want to hit a couple points. So obviously, where'd you hear about us? By asking that question, getting the client to tell you what prompted them to call that time. If you're doing it right, they've seen you in 8 places. They saw you in the Little League sign. They got your email. They got your card. They got your thank you card. They've seen your van around town. And so the real answer is much more insidious. It's top of mind brand awareness. If I had to select one lead campaign, one lead source, it's just top of mind brand awareness, Loft. That's it. Just constantly making your name synonymous with the products and services that you offer. That's perfection, right? And so again, the lead source indicator is not going to be perfect. There's all kinds of reasons why you can say, yeah, well. Again, though, it's about measuring in the same way and then tracking change over time. And so clients by lead source, first of all, you don't want to have a null field there. You just don't. ServiceMonster, you can turn on and make people fill it out. You can also turn it off so you can just move about your business if you don't happen to really harp on that question. But tracking it at the account level is super important. Now, most CRM will allow you to track your lead source at the account level. They'll let you put in the name of a campaign and then select that from a dropdown. That's about as far as they go, though. For us, it's 50% of our application, right? So not only do you have campaigns and lead sources and email campaigns and call campaigns and direct mail campaigns and export campaigns for third-party vendors, but tracking that lead source ties into ROI and how much you've spent and like all kinds of really important metrics that can tell you, well, yeah, that campaign brought a lot of people in, but the repeat rate was kind of low and they were shitty upsellers. Like they just did the bare minimum. All right. Well, compared to my other customers that I really like, who, are always getting a couple add-ons and they're very pleasant to work with and they do repeat well. Where did they come from? So lead source can tell you a lot about where you're attracting clients from. And maybe even should I pull a lead source because it's in an area that I'm getting a lot of attention that I don't want to get, like from customers. I don't want to, is your messaging for that campaign off? And so tracking customers by lead sources is very important. We're the only CRM that I know of where we track lead source by the order as well. And so some people get confused by that. The first order that you do, if it's coming in from a lead, is typically going to have the same lead source as the account acquisition, granted. But what people make the mistake of doing is taking a lead source on an account and changing it the next time they come back. Because the CM doesn't let them track the lead source of the order. It's so bad. It destroys the historical record of how that customer came to you in the first place. Don't do that. Don't do that. We import data all the time from other CRM, and I don't know how often we see this damn lead source that says repeat.
Repeat. Yep.
Repeat. And what they're trying to say is, okay, I'm going to change the lead source to repeat so I know they came back to me. Well, now you don't know where they came from originally, and you don't know anything. Repeat doesn't mean anything. You know they're repeat because they have 2 invoices. Stop doing that. Stop marking them as repeat. The best way, again, how ServiceMonster handles it is subsequent orders, you track the lead source from that order. You don't change the account. New orders get new lead sources. That way, not only do you know how your clients are acquiring your business, right? How are you acquiring that client? What channels are you using to get new clients? But what programs are working for client retention? So we go back to our first KPI, client retention. Oh, Mrs. Jones, so glad you called again. Wait, what prompted your call today? Oh, I just got this dirty carpet I'm looking at, and about a year ago you came by and you sent me a thank you card or two, and so I got this card on my refrigerator, and or the bottle of spotter or the magnet or whatever it is. They'll mention something. You can even say, hey, how'd you get my phone number this time? I was on my Rolodex, or it was in, on the thing that you left. Okay, awesome. Mark that on the order level. Do not change the account lead source. And now you have metrics tracking where you're getting clients from and which campaigns are bringing clients back.
Absolutely. The next one we want to kind of cover average job time by order group.
Yeah. So this is a little ServiceMonster specific, so I'll try to obfuscate a little bit, but you can track the type of orders. Now, you may have an order that has both tile and grout and carpet cleaning, so that does get a little weird, but it could be a general cleaning versus restoration, right? So you can create larger buckets that encompass multiple items most of the time. And then breaking down how long you spend on them. So your average carpet cleaning takes 2 hours. Your average restoration takes you, 6 days, like whatever the point is. But just knowing how much time you spend on a job will help in the planning aspects. They will help you understand your margins better, right? Because the longer time you spend, the more labor hours, the higher cost. And the more time you spend on something, the more the margin should be creeping up, right? A 2-hour job should have X number of margin. If you do a 4-hour job, it's okay and acceptable to make the same margin. But, if you go for a 2-day project, those margins should not be the same as a 2-hour job. So little things you want to play with there when you know how much time each one of those general groups is taking you.
It can also sometimes work as a red flag if you find, or on the opposite of that, like if you have a kind of rock star employee who is doing their job properly, doing it more efficiently, maybe that's a signal. Maybe increase their commission, pay, anything like that. Use that as a carrot on a stick for the others. Or
do the Ross Perot thing where you give top 25% raise, you fire the bottom 25%, and everyone in the middle gets the message.
Yep.
I'm not a big fan of that kind of hard love stuff, but it does build a culture of, oh shit, I better get this stuff done. But then they cut corners, and you can start making arguments for if you really hammer it too hard. But yeah, no question, you'll it's the outliers you're looking for, right? Like, wow, this job took twice as long as our average. Like, what's going on? I'll have a discussion with the project manager, or have a discussion with the employees on the site. Or, wow, we just hired Jimmy, and how come he's done in an hour for every time we hand a job to everybody else? They do it in 2 hours. Does he need training? Like, it might not be because he's super awesome. It might be because he's missing a bunch of shit. And Mrs. Jones is going to call back, and now your rework is higher. So, or it could be Jimmy's a rock star, and all the rest of your people have a conspiracy that they're just going to go slow. And as long as they all go slow together, then no one will notice. So, I'm just making stuff up. I've never actually heard that. But, if you have the data, then you can see the outliers, and then you can go figure out what's going on. Same thing with what we do with performance and all that kind of stuff with our own KPIs. So,
absolutely. And the last one here, just talking about your sales pipeline. So what is the sales pipeline, and why should you track that?
Yeah, so you get a lead. Hopefully a lead converts to either an over the phone estimate or an in-home estimate. And then that lead who turns into an estimate converts into work. And then that work converts into an invoice. That invoice converts to a payment. That payment converts then back to a rework, going back down through the funnel again. So you have this funnel, right? Orientation of my hands here. So you have this funnel, and at the top is the leads, right? And then you're going to drop a certain percentage of those when you do the estimate. You're going to drop a certain percentage of those when you actually go do the work. Hopefully the vast majority of the people you do work for, you get paid for. There'll be some outliers there. We got to go chase money around. Again, ServiceMonster makes that easy. QuickBooks can make that easy. Systems will make that easy. And then after you do the job and you get paid, then you're looking to feed that funnel back in as new lead acquisition. So you have this nice life cycle of a client. So that's generally the sales pipeline. If you know how many you're converting, first of all, if you know what your lead acquisition costs are, that's important. And how many of those are you converting to estimates, and how many of those are you converting to orders or invoices? And you know those percentages. Once you understand that about your business, then you can watch as you change things if you can make the needle move. At the very least, if you can't make the needle move, but you just have a consistent, like, it's like, okay, I close 50% of all leads, and 80% of all of those leads that we close to estimates then convert to work orders. You can say, oh, look at what are we doing to convert such a high number of people? Like, that's good. And then if you have a period of time where it drops, you can go figure out why. If you have a change, make a change and things go up, then you know why. And so you can play with those gears and levers. And I've heard Josh Latimer talk about this. When you understand all these pieces, you have a lever. Like, okay, I know if I put in X number of dollars, I'm going to get X number of leads, and that X number of leads is going to convert to X number of estimates, which is going to convert to X number of invoices. And now it's just a money machine. You can put money in, goes to the top of the funnel, goes through the funnel, spits out money at the end. And as long as the money that's being spit out at your margin is higher than the amount you're putting in at your marketing costs, you win. You can do that all day long until you hit the cap, which folds back to your total market potential, right? Because you can't get more people than there are people. So see how all this ties together, works together like a nice, neat little package. All these KPIs work together to give you a really good dashboard, if you will, of your plane, of your car, of your business. So, and you can see the changes you're making, how they are being affected, and how they are the outcome. Does it generate more money at the end of the day? That's what we all really want to know.
And there's actually a new one that we implemented in 6.5, just a unique dashboard to the schedule that was kind of
love it. Brandon Vaughn's big thing. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Shout out. I'm not speaking at it. I don't no hard feelings or nothing. He tried to reach out to me at one point. It might've been that, and we just never connected, but he's got like a big, huge event, like 40 speakers and like just thousands of service professionals. So, that's the, AGS, right? What do they call it? What is that group?
This is the Home Services Super Summit. It's separate.
It's separate, but it's Brandon's thing, and he's going to be selling the shit out of his services too, for sure.
Yeah.
Right. But I just wanted to give a shout out to that, because if you guys don't know about it, go hunt for it. It's on Facebook. You can go look up Brandon, give a shout out. Yeah. He'll give you a free ticket. It's all free. It's all virtual. They've got some pretty incredible speakers. Gerber's there from eMyth. He's got the dude from the Pumpkin Plan, I think. And then all of your people that you would think, should be a speaker or leader in industry, they're all there except for maybe 2 or 3 of them, including myself. I'm not there. But again, Brandon, no hurt feelings or nothing. It's all good. Think about me next time, please.
Let's talk a little bit about the actual dashboard. Kind of came from a conversation that you and Brandon had from the joining the Conquer group, and it's showing kind of your booked, what percentage you are booked that month in the schedule. It also shows kind of the previous month and so on. So you can kind of tell, how much have I missed from just missed appointments overall? How much have I actively, booked? And let's say we're on like, June 20th and I've got, 10 days left. What's my potential? Kind of lighting that fire under your butt to see if I was to just, book out the last 10 days, what would I get? So is there anything you kind of want to add on to that?
I think you did a pretty good job. Obviously, the previous month there's nothing bookable. It's all either lost opportunity or book jobs. This month has lost opportunity in the form of the first to whatever day you're on. A potential opportunity that is open schedule from today to the end of the month. And then the amount of book time. So you have red, white, and blue, right? White's available, blue is booked, and red is you've lost it. Time has gone by and you can't go fill those positions. And then it shows you next month's current booking capacity. The goal here is not 100% booking. It's going to be impossible. the goal really is to establish a baseline. What is your normal? Oh, normally we book 50% or 60% of our schedule. Awesome. Then 1 month goes to 75 and you go, whoa, what? Why did it do that? And then, Michael and I and Adam start tearing through data, looking through reports, trying to figure out the why. Why do we want to figure out the why, Michael? You've been kind of quiet, but why as marketers would it be a good idea to know why an anomaly happened?
Well, because if it's a good anomaly like that, you want to be able to repeat it. You want to be able to do it again. You want to know
And again and again and again and again.
Yeah, what changed? What caused this? Like, was it this campaign that I did? That KPI is tracking, specifically your marketing campaigns. That's incredible to do because you see a spike in something, you're like,
and
well,
if
what did I do
you
this
happen
month?
to lose,
what changed? And that's super valuable. Huh?
Yeah, and if you happen to, my network may be lagging a little bit here, so
Yep.
I don't know if that stutter was just for me or what, but yeah, and I don't know if you said this during the timeout, but the other flip side of that is if it's a bad KPI, understanding why it happened so you don't do it again, right? So good KPIs do again, bad KPIs don't do again, but you have to understand the why, the reasoning, and sometimes it gets muddied. Sometimes there'll be multiple factors. And I always, as an engineer, that's always problematic. I don't want to make 5 changes and then suddenly fix the problem. It's like, which one of the 5 changes I made did it fix the problem? So, there's a little bit of that. That's why Michael and I are kind of excited for the data that's coming out of COVID from ServiceMonster, because it's almost like old school science vacuums. They run experiments inside vacuum tubes so that they didn't have to deal with the rest of the crap in the atmosphere. So you can just fill it with argon and then pump energy through it and see what happens. And so this is kind of an interesting period of time where we have this isolated kind of situation where the data coming out of it has such a different vector that you can cross-section that with normal. And where they intersect is where the really interesting information is. And then, because then you can kind of peel away the onion and make those happen again. So, yeah.
That's actually perfectly right into, I was going to mention your new public dashboard kind of project you're working on. Because like our last podcast, we talked about the month of March, the numbers, the cleaning industry numbers, number of jobs overall. And we're going to be releasing more data soon for April and May. But it's kind of sparked this whole project. If you want to briefly touch on that, Joe, I think it's pretty cool. Something people can look forward to.
Yeah. So, and I don't know why it took me so long to realize this, but about once a year, we do a kind of a benchmark survey where we query our metadata, ServiceMonster's data, the 500 million invoices, $500 million in invoices, 1.2 million jobs we process a year. And it's hard to put that data together. And so it takes David or myself at least a day or two to crunch the data. And then it takes someone else a couple hours at least to kind of massage it to get it into a format or what we call a shape that then is consumable on the output. So the web page that you guys look at, or the map that has all the averages across it, or the colors or whatever. That's a very time consuming process. And we've always wanted to do more of that, because not only does it spark amazing conversation, it draws attention to ServiceMonster, which is good as a business owner. But they're just really good conversations, knowing where you're at compared to other people. It's like, are you killing it? Or you think you're killing it, but you're kind of average? Do you think you're average, but actually you're not doing well at all by comparison? It's like, my area doesn't allow for it. Well, okay. South Dakota and North Dakota are radically different places. You might have a case if you're comparing your South Dakota numbers against your North Dakota numbers. But if you're comparing your North Dakota numbers against your North numbers, then you don't have anything to talk about. Obviously, you can say, well, my county, but then you start really making excuses, right? So you're not being stoic or existentialist there. You're just being a victim. Stop it with the victim mentality and look at the things that you can control and change. So yeah, it's what I really wanted to do is give you guys this information on a more regular basis and not take my resource pool days to produce this. And sometimes it just takes my drive to make it happen too, which if I'm working on, depending on what I'm working on, because my job is not always to work on my task list, right? So what we're doing is we're putting together a single page that'll sit in our blog that'll be open to everybody, where it has some very high level, not a lot, but a couple like job percentage growth, month over month for the year, average invoice broken down by state, income change up or down for that same time period from this time last year. I think I have like 4 or 5 of them identified. So not a lot, not very deep. We're not going to go into service breakdown or, average repeat rates and that kind of stuff at the moment. And I don't know if I ever will go down that low by ServiceMonster, and then you'll have more of that data. But I think it's just a good thing to kind of ground the conversation around, and it'll be live. So once we're done, it'll just be like ServiceMonster just serving up a open page inside of our blog or in the brochure site itself, which gives you access to this information, and you can look at your state and so forth. So I don't know why it's taken me so long to realize we needed to build a single dashboard to do this, but that's where we're at. And I started that project a couple of days ago. So it's going to take me a while. It's kind of a side project. I'm doing it 2 a.m, but it's not that complex. So as little time and as sleepless nights as I'm going to be spending on it, it still shouldn't take any longer than a month or so. So it's kind of where we're at with that.
Nice.
There's one kind of quick thing that I wanted to, you were talking about, when you have 5 fixes and you're not really sure which one solved the issue. It's kind of in the same kind of vein where when something massive like this happens with COVID-19, everyone knew that the numbers were going to be different, right? It didn't know how different. Obviously, it's going to be broken down by state, region, and so on. But I think it's a really easy kind of mindset when something like that happens and you expect bad data or good data or whatever. You don't dive deeper, and you just kind of, like you said, like it's just
confirmation bias. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, the confirmation bias around that negative output, and you don't actually see if there's anything else you could have done to improve or so on. So it's kind of something to be aware of when you guys are kind of looking at stuff like that. I mean, constantly be working to improve, right? So I think with that, we've definitely been chatting on that for a while.
Hour, just an hour on KPIs.
Really, really good stuff in there. I hope you guys kind of pulled something valuable out of that for you and your teams.
Yep.
We can just kind of segue into some ServiceMonster news. I'll go through this a little bit kind of quickly because we have been talking about this a little bit on the last couple of podcasts.
Before we segue off, though, I just want to point out again, this information is available on our blog. Yep. It's an older blog post, but all the data is there, and Michael will publish a link in the show notes. So if you're interested in that. Also, because we're on an hour, so we're probably going to be at least another half an hour with the stuff that else we're going to talk about on YouTube. So if you're watching us on YouTube, go to the section where we describe things and put links and stuff. There is an index system there that Michael spends a lot of time on to make sure that you can jump to the things that you care about.
That's Justin, not me, actually.
Oh, Justin. Sorry.
Give Justin
I'm giving Justin credit here.
Yeah.
You should just been quiet. Justin can't talk for himself.
Yeah, he's not on camera.
Stand up for him. Yeah.
So
he does a great job with that. Yeah.
Totally. It's not easy to find all those points. So if you find yourself like, oh man, I've listened to Joe talk about repeat rates for freaking 6 years, like you can go there and you can bounce around at the sections that are now you're going to miss some of the nuggets because we don't index everything. And occasionally we'll do something where it's like same. Oh, whole brand new. And it's like, that was an amazing point. So you'll miss those opportunities, but you can use that indexing system to bounce around. All right. What now about ServiceMonster would we like to discuss?
Some ServiceMonster news. So we've been talking about release 6.5.1. We're actually going to break it up into 2 releases, and we'll talk a little bit more why we're doing that here in just a few minutes. But the first thing we're going to be kind of releasing are something that you yourself are working on, Joe, both kind of the server request caching and then ServiceMonster 6 client caching, and kind of improving some of these queries and such that were, the account page was a big one that you found when you were working on another feature where, some calls are being sent out and maybe don't necessarily have to be sent out. And you want to kind of maybe just talk about that a little bit without going too high level?
Yeah, I mean, without going too deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to dive into all the technical stuff. We have 20, the number's 21 users. But then it starts to get gray latency. So you can go up to 35 or 40 customers that are experiencing some sort of problematic latency. Not where the request came back in 5 seconds instead of 3 or 2. But they're seeing like 20-second. And sometimes poor Mary Lynn was timing out yesterday a couple times. And it's to such a small section. I mean, it's such a small portion of our total client database. But to me, just like the Japanese carpet cleaner and what we were talking about before, it's a badge of honor. Like all the stuff that I usually create is fast. And so we have this huge application now, a couple million lines of code, processing through tons of data points with thousands of clients and, tens of thousands of users. And what we see is there's a few clients that have some of these problems, and it drives me nuts. And so we've come up with an 11-step plan to try to eliminate them, to try to make them in line with everybody else that's using the system. And as we do that, everyone else is going to benefit from the performance as well. So I won't go through all 11 steps, but step 1, which was moving our database servers to a larger instance on the VM. So bigger machines, more power. So we threw some money at it. That was number 1. That solves Monday morning blues problems when everyone comes in on Monday at 9:00. That's, obviously East Coast to West Coast, but at 9:00 is kind of peak performance for us. So that flattens that curve. So we didn't see any craziness with Monday morning blues this last Monday. The previous Tuesday and the previous Monday we did for different reasons, but those have been resolved. Step 2 is some indexing stuff. It's just the way, it's just like sounds. It's like a book has an index in the back. It makes it easier to find the data. Same thing with databases. We put some more indexes on. So that helped a little bit as well. Step 3 and step 4 I've already finished coding wise, which is what Adam's talking about, which will be in the release for the first part of 6.5.1. The client side caching is going to be opt-in to start with, and it's kind of hidden. So pay attention if you want to try it out. Adam saw it for the first time this week, I think, or last week, and it just hauls ass. And it's just like, because it doesn't go to the server. But it does go to the server when you have to do an update or you do, that kind of stuff. So it doesn't get stale. The info doesn't get too stale. And we only keep it around for a few minutes anyways. But the performance improvements are just undeniable. You have to go to the support page, though, and turn that on. So when that release comes out, you want to see that. The server-side caching that will accompany that, that's just going to be on all the time and should also do a significant amount of reducing our network traffic and how many times we're going to the database to make requests. I feel like I'm just at the surface, but I also feel like I might be going a little too low. So I don't know how to go any higher and not be a little meta message. So forgive me. That's step 3 and 4. And then we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And there's a handful of things there going from our deployment strategy, making sure that things happen automatically. So if a machine goes down, the system knows and can bring one up without intervention. New monitoring tools so we can see well ahead of time. Even if it's only 2 customers are having an issue, we get an alarm, an alert that'll make that happen. Logging and transactions. And again, query performance and analyzing and tuning, all that stuff. So the end result here is that the vast majority of our clients who aren't really experiencing any problems are going to get faster. And the few customers that we have massive latency should be directly in line with everybody else when we're done. I wouldn't have been able to do this, though, without Aaron's rebuild on the schedule. Because before we even started talking about performance improvement, we knew the biggest performance problem was how the schedule was drawing. And so that is the V1 schedule. It's rendering. That's what we call drawing on the computer. Its rendering engine was super slow for a large company. So if you have, more than 20 routes, even if the data was coming back in 500 milliseconds, which it does, it took an additional 20 seconds to draw the damn thing on the screen. Aaron's rework, which took a better part of 8 months on creating a brand new schedule, lightning fast. Those redraws are within a few seconds. by the same token. So the data still comes back 500 milliseconds. Then you got a 2 or 3 second redraw time for those really large companies. That's where we want things to be for everybody. So if you're one of those 20 companies or so, and Joel and Jason and Marilyn and that group, obviously we've talked to you guys about, so we're working on it. But if you're silent and you're one of the 21, know that we are working on it, and it pains me and it's keeping me up at night. Like I've gotten 3 hours of sleep in the past 2 days just for these small amount of customers, because I'm building dashboards and performance monitors and alert systems. So that's the kind of my 2:00 in the morning project right now.
Yeah, that's actually going to segue into the entrejoe kind of statement that we have here. But before we do that, I also do want to kind of just quickly update you guys. There was a small hotfix that went out on desktop. One of the things that we did was we added on the web config, we made it so that we could actually adjust on the fly kind of what level of a server request. Like it was at 10 seconds, I believe, originally. It was just kind of hard coded in there, Joe, if that's right. So any request that was longer than that, we would get automatically flagged. But we adjusted that so we can go really deep into that. Any request over 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, whatever. So that was one of the main things that we kind of put out as a hotfix. You guys can see that. We have all release notes out right on the blog post. More importantly, I know that a lot of users are chomping at the bit for the update on mobile. And we had a little bit of a snag on the date time picker. When we upgraded the framework of React Native, the old date and time picker, the library that we pulled that from, was no longer usable. And so Ethan's been painstakingly working on that, and he and our QA team, Greg, have been kind of going back and forth on that. And they're close, but I don't have a set date in particular, especially because we still have to go through the verification process through Apple and Google. But we're really hoping by the time this podcast is released to you all that it will be out or on the very near cusp, because I know everyone's chomping at the bit for that. We've talked about what's in it. If you guys are curious, you can watch one of the other podcasts, because we definitely went deep on some of those. So with that, as far as the entrejoe statement, since you're the one who pulled that out, Michael, you want to give that a go?
Yeah. This one was really good, and this is perfect. Like you mentioned earlier, Adam, actually, this is perfect regarding what you were just talking about, Joe. The quote is, as an entrepreneur, your job is to conquer the most difficult challenges facing the company. They have the largest impact, and they are always the highest priority. You must also trailblaze, lead, and inspire. You are a problem solver. Leave your own problems at the door. Just want to briefly touch on where you were at, I guess, when you wrote that, because that's very timely, I think, for what you were talking about with how invested you've been in this project, helping out the slowness.
Yeah, you can break that post into kind of 2 parts, right? The very end is too many entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders take the chip on their shoulder with them. How many times have you guys noticed that my personal life interferes with the business, or even know what's going on in my personal life that's adversely affecting me at the time? Can you think of anything? I'll talk about things after the fact, right? Like the water situation or right. The trouble with our son or whatever. But during it, I mean, I'm just all about stoic, just moving forward and making sure that things are. And when I'm focused on the business, I'm focused on the business, not the problems that I have, not the fight with the wife, not the, whatever it is, angry about the COVID or whatever it is. Again, it's that introspective nature to pull yourself out of yourself and then go serve a purpose and a mission and leave that baggage down for a minute. So that a lot of times it's the end of my posts that will, attempt the mic drop and also push the most pointed point. The rest of that message is as equally true. And again, very reminiscent of what's going on with me personally right now, which is I have a list of shit that I want to do. Adam's got some stuff in Tracker for me. Eric wants me to do a handful of things. I'm helping David out. I'm helping the engineers. I'm overseeing, just a lot of stuff on my list that needs to get done. And as soon as the sluggish performance things started happening, that all went out the window. So nothing that I am doing right now should be affecting right now, right? My goal is the things that I'm doing right now affect next quarter. So that when the company shows up to next quarter, everybody knows what the hell's going on, what we're supposed to be doing, what our true north is. If I'm always with the company doing my tasks and not paying attention to the bigger issues, then when we show up next quarter together, we're all going to be freaking lost. Like, what do we do now? Like, what's going on here? And how come we didn't take care of that last week? I mean, I had built the server side and client side caching performance before the first Monday morning blues that happened 2 weeks ago. And so when we're like, okay, we need to do a project that's focused on performance, I already had stuff in the code base that was ready to roll out for Adam to push, because I had bent my time to focus on what was important then for the future. And so some of you paying really close attention now might be a little confused because I did two conflicting things. I want to untangle it. I say that your priority is the most important thing right now, but then I also say you're working on the things that will be ready for next quarter. They're the same. If you have all of your employees drop everything to go chase the fire, then they're not going to be doing the work that actually needs to get done. And so you need to be able to drop to put out the fire so that the fire isn't a complete 5-alarm fire next month, right? So you're putting those things out so that when the whole company shows up next month, it's not on fire, ideally. So if you're pushing the one and that's all you're doing as a single owner operator, and your goal is to get off the truck, you need to start edging your way to that mentality of working on the things that are going to set your business up for next quarter. Unfortunately, it means you're going to need to be a couple people. But as you get more people, and I went through this too, right? When it was just Eric and Dave and I in the office and cranking things out, and I was writing code and I was doing the selling and Eric was doing the training, and David's pretty much doing the same thing he was doing back then. It's important as you build some depth in your company that you move into more purposeful roles. And at this point now with 20 people, it would be easy for me to I did it, a couple of years ago when I had pneumonia, right? I was on the heels of a vacation too. So I was gone for like 6 weeks. Nobody noticed. Like, there was like Joe could help me solve that, but I'll do it on my own. Or, hey, let's get a team together. And what would Joe do? And like, there might've been that kind of stuff, but everything happened seamlessly. You guys were amazing and didn't require my freaking help at all. That's the perfect point of a business owner to get to, where the business doesn't need you and you can just walk away. I don't think it's fully at that point yet. I think we've had some backslide in the past year or two. But that's where we're all headed. And so making sure you're paying attention to that. And again, it's about introspection and it's about vision. Where do you see the company next month? That should be different. That should be a different place than it is right now. And if you're like, I don't know how it'd be different the next month, what can I do? Start thinking, like, at all hours of the day, at all things you do. You're pushing that one. You're thinking about how the business can be different next month. What things can you do to prepare so that when the company shows up next month, you're further ahead, not in the same spot? Doesn't matter if you walk, run, or crawl. Move forward is the key. And if you're not moving forward, just like you are in your own life, if you don't have the introspection like we talked about last week to try to make the stronger version of yourself, then you're going to be the same version of yourself. And that's what a waste of time. What a waste of beauty, brilliance, strength. It's just pouring it on the floor. It's the number one driver for me, to a detriment. I will say, like, my ambition juice is way too high. I'm always looking to be way smarter today than I was yesterday. And I try to surround myself with people who have that same mentality too. So we build a really good company, but I have to be constantly on the lookout for the next thing. Where are we going to be? Where are we positioning the company? And how can we then put a path in place, stepping stones, so that everyone can come there together? I do this probably a little more than I should. I don't know if that's the right term. I'm going to do it as much as I do it. And that's what weaves in the fabric of the company. We change rapidly. Like ServiceMonster is the most volatile environment for change that I've certainly ever worked in. And I think that the people that we attract enjoy that kind of. Adam likes to, maybe he's a little bit more on the, Eric too. Eric even way more than Adam, a little bit more on the conservative, like, like, okay, change is good. That change is good. But it was a little bit uncomfortable there, but we need that in the product manager, right? So he's like, hey, slow the roll. Let's make sure we get this thing tested and we understand what we're doing before we just like code something out like crazy and push it out. Which, I win 70% of the time when I do that, but there's that 30% of the time when nobody cares or it doesn't work right. So not buggy though. I don't write buggy code. That's other people. But yeah, that's kind of where I was at with that whole thing. Staying ahead, being the visionary. And then when problems happen, you got to be the one to grab it, take the horns and provide the direction. If you have a project manager, they can certainly help with that, which is the equivalent we have of our product management here with Adam. He certainly helps that a lot because we've got the resources that are development, and then we've got me, which is trying to pull everybody forward. And sometimes they're like, they don't want to go forward yet. They got to finish where they're at. So that push and pull is important. You can't just be all pull, and you can't just all sit around. So that's what you get as an individual. So you bring in people that will help you either push you forward or will attach an anchor to you to keep you from going too hard, too fast.
The old ball and chain over here. That's me.
Well, I call Eric my pessimistic accountant, right? So you're just a mini version of that for the product, which right. I appreciate. And yeah, I just, it's exactly where it needs to be as far as I'm concerned. But
oh, I definitely appreciate that, Joe. As we kind of move into SMUG, one of the main topics we've already discussed, and Joe had a video kind of selfie post. I think it was like 5 or 6 minutes, the one that you put on SMUG there. It kind of just detailed everything that we've talked about with the server upgrades and slowness issues you guys have been experiencing. So we've already covered that, but just kind of, reinforcing that is a major thing that we're working on. We want you guys to have the best experience possible. So
and I want to ground this too, because, we have a tendency to do this, which is focus on the thing that we're focused on. Our average return response time is 200 milliseconds. 50% of our executions happen in under 100 milliseconds. And you can open up Debugger and go look at this and look at all the network traffic. So take our, it's slow with a grain of salt. Now, the people who are getting the 20-second load times, that's not a grain of salt. That's super freaking frustrating. So I get it. And that's why we are working on it. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? 99% of all of our clients are getting 200 millisecond response times. And it just takes a couple seconds to draw on the screen at most. So they're flying. When I go into customer databases, most of the time I'm flying. Click, 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 click.
So that was actually one of the reasons why we had such a hard time kind of pinning this down, because when we're going through, I'm just like, what are you talking about? Everything's fine.
Yeah.
And then, that's when we start to find some of these problem,
more hidden issues. Exactly. Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to discuss really, really quickly, there was a post from Corey, and while he was kind of talking about on the schedule, which phone number should show up on the kind of the hover pop-up that you guys see there.
On the appointment hover.
Yep. I had kind of made a post on there, just kind of wanting to gather some feedback from Corey and from the others that were on the post. Just what number is most important to them? Commercial versus residential. Does it change? Does it matter? And so on. And Corey was the only one who responded. And I just kind of wanted to kind of mention that if any of you guys see something like that, where there's a little bit of discussion going on, and it's a topic that maybe interests you a little bit, or maybe it's a kind of a minor thing, it's a great time to throw your kind of hat on that and just, give us your reasoning. And, everything that you guys do in SMUG is something that we do listen to that. And so if you want to be part of the change, then that's kind of a great way to discuss. Doesn't mean that every single thing you guys mention is what's going to be implemented. It's just we do take that into consideration. So
Yeah, let me take a second, just real quick, and talk about SMUG etiquette. Just because I don't think we touch on that enough, what it is and what it isn't. SMUG is not a support channel. It is not the place you go to get support. If you need something, then call support or email support or chat support. If you want to make us aware of something, that's where you go for SMUG. SMUG is a user group. I want the conversations primarily to be facilitated by users. How do you do this? How do you do that? Does anyone have content or ideas, or how do you tackle that? It's really your 500 of your closest service provider friends who have no judgment. And again, I don't put up with any kind of personal attacks, ad hominem, logical fallacy. Just eliminate it. I just eliminate it. It's not in my playground. I also usually don't censor, although I will kick and ban and block, not block. I will kick and ban and delete posts occasionally. I think I've done 3 in the 5 years we've been doing SMUG. So it's very rare because most people are very well behaved. And even when people are frustrated, most of the time they're able to communicate their issue, their frustration, in a way that's still respectful. You come in, though, and you're negative and you're throwing out ad hominem. I get that you're frustrated. Sometimes this stuff can be super frustrating. I empathize with that. But when you leave a post, just all, this stupid thing, I hate it, and again and again and again. Like, okay, I get the frustration, but that is not helpful nor useful, and I will delete it. If you come in and say, frustrated, use the word. When is this going to be addressed? Or if you know the data and you're just pointing it out, it's not useful. Be of help and use on SMUG. I want to see that more participation, more people who are lurkers that are just helping facilitate the conversation and getting their opinions across, but do it respectfully to everyone involved. Don't make personal attacks, and show enough self-control to leave a very good and productive comment or post. A couple of people do this fairly well. Paul Johnston comes to mind, right? When he has an issue, he will hammer on it, or he'll send us long documents which help us uncover things. He's obviously frustrated, but I also see the restraint and I see the maturity, communicating the fact that he's frustrated, but at the same time providing some information that will help us get through it. Yelling, screaming, and cussing that it's broke doesn't help anything, because we can't fix it's broke, because it's not broke for anyone else but you, or maybe 5 people, or maybe there is a systemic issue and we're not aware of it yet, or we're working on it. So come in with respect, but come in, participate. And so I hope that helps alleviate some people, like, because they're, in other groups, they'll lurk, but they won't make posts because there's so many people and they're just asshats. So we don't put up with it in SMUG. But I also want to make sure that you guys are being mature about this. I get that some of you get frustrated sometimes, but this is like the chip on your shoulder or leaving that baggage at the door. It's the same thing in your company. If you're coming hard at us for what most of the time turns out to be a user issue or a small issue, I can't even imagine what your employees have to deal with. So again, introspection, right? Just show a level of restraint and maturity in SMUG, but participate more than you might in other groups. That would be greatly appreciated. Can we take that feedback to heart? It gets all logged in Tracker. It really does. If it comes with a bunch of, bullshit, then it doesn't get logged in Tracker. I'll tell you that. It gets ignored. So some advice on how to actually communicate Like, are you soft? Are you volleyball to the face, right? Waiting for your turn to talk. Don't care about what the response is. Just want to make your point. Or are you trying to educate and get educated? There's a big difference in the communication method there.
Yeah, that's great to go over kind of the intent of SMUG that we have. And to wrap it up, the last thing we have, Robert actually asked in SMUG, is FMS retired for good? The answer is no. But Joe, just to kind of give the overview real quick of what our process is, and kind of actually by the time this is out, FMS may be back up and running. So what's it looking like?
So Whatcom County in Washington State submitted a reopen request for phase 2 yesterday or day before yesterday. And we should be knowing in a couple days whether or not they're going to approve that. Phase 2 is where Fill My Schedule comes back. It's light industrial. So the group is already working hard to make everything as smooth as possible. Alex, our Fill My Schedule manager, was playing a support role until Fill My Schedule came back. Eric, our COO, is going to be working with him to stuff cards and stamp and seal and print. Obviously, we're going to be hiring a couple people, which is going to get weird and awkward right now. So I'm not sure how that's all going to play out. And I don't want to print 50,000 cards on the 6th of every month, because this is not attainable. So yes, Fill My Schedule is coming back. Yes, it will be very soon, maybe even already out by the time you're listening to this. It coming back online will be a first come, first serve basis. So look for the posts, look for the emails saying, hey, Fill My Schedule is opening back up, get in line. And you click a link and it'll take you to a form, and you'll need to fill out that form. Now, here's a secret. So all you podcast and YouTube people, like, here's where it pays off. If you want Fill My Schedule in your client's hands as quick as possible, submit one request and say, I don't need any changes. I just want to turn it back on as it was and move forward. Now, I know what's in your head. But Joe, what about all those people that didn't get contacted for the last 6 to 8 weeks? And what about, I want to do a campaign that says we're open for business to let all my clients know? Both good ideas, both good thoughts. But anybody who is requesting changes to their campaigns or an additional one-shot campaign gets put in a slow lane, because I have to pull resources. We got to do queries. We got to inject it in the system, on top of people turning on their regularly scheduled programs and a reduced work staff. Okay. So the reality is, if you want to get cards into your client's hands as quickly as possible, submit the form the first time saying, no changes, get me up and running. There is one exception to that rule. We will change the front of your card upon request without putting you in the slow lane. Because we have one new, it's kind of boring, but it works. It's an image and it says we're open for business. So it lets your clients know, if you wanted to switch just for this one time, this 1 month, where you're sending out a yes, we're open for business card, we could do that. So that's the one caveat. All the other, like, I want to send out to X list, I want to catch up on the last 8 weeks, I need changes to my campaign inside, the document or whatever. Those are all going to go in the slow lane. So don't tie them together. Submit 2 requests would be my advice. Submit the first request that says, turn me on and let's go. Let's go. And then the second, you do it again and you hit submit, and then you go back and you click on the link, you go back to the form, make sure it's blank, and then fill it out again, making the specific requests, knowing that those are going to take a while. I'm going to have to throttle this, because I could, on the first day, I could easily have 10 to 20,000 cards to print tomorrow. And that's just going to be impossible to ship out that way. So we're going to trickle it in every day, a couple thousand a day, moving forward until everybody's back on, or everybody who wants to be back on is back on. So a couple little things there. That's interesting. The webinar is going to end in 4 minutes, but then the clock stopped. Did you do something, Adam? Okay, thank you. I was trying to make that time. So a little advice there. If you want to get cards back in your client's hands as quickly as possible, submit 2 requests. One saying just get them going, and the other one saying here's some changes I'd like to make, and then we'll get to those eventually.
Cool. That's it.
Man,
That's all we
hour and
got.
35 minutes. Anything else you have, Mr. Adam?
No, I think we've definitely talked about plenty today. So
I have one little minor kind of silly thing. It's real. And it's quite a bit back.
We always joke about this when Joe gets started. First,
I have a green screen bookcase.
I thought it was when we initially discussed this. I swear something came up that there was a green screen that Joe had pulled up, and so I was like, "Man, it really looks like a bookcase." And so
I've actually had DMs about it and being like, "What?" I'm like, "No, it's real." And not only that, but it's like way back there too. Like I can't even reach it if I have my headphones on. Looks a lot closer than it is.
That's crazy to me. It looks so much closer.
And yes, we have tons, and this is just 3 bookshelves. Like just in this room alone, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more bookshelves.
Wow.
No, we like books. Homeschool family. But
Right.
I digress. Thank you so much for your attention, everybody. And I hope you guys are ready because we're about to open up. I know a lot of you haven't been that affected, and some of you are even doing better. We talk about that failure to service. I'm seeing it. Got a post today from someone like, I need to hire 5 people. What do I do? And I'm like, you do. Never mind. It's just tough. So be prepared for that, guys. It's coming. We're almost done here. We got to get through these protests, obviously, and then through this reopening, and then watch the numbers. Like I said, I'll carry a clipboard around to see what the reinfection looks like, but it's coming, guys. It's coming quick. So be prepared. And again, thank you for your attention. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all of the conversations that we have. Until next time.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.